Joining our discussion now is Democratic Senator Sheldon Whitehouse of Rhode Island. He's a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee and the top Democrat on the subcommittee for federal courts on that committee. Senator Whitehouse, I'm struck by a couple of things. That question, what keeps you up at night, never used to be asked of judges, especially Supreme Court justices. You'd ask a defense secretary, you'd ask a CIA director maybe, you'd ask a president, but not a Supreme Court justice. So there's the question, which is quite remarkable. And then there's the answer, which is the state of our democracy. And for the kids watching out there, I don't know about you, Senator, but in a lifetime of listening to Supreme Court justices, I have never heard such a question and answer, and never expected to.
Yeah, nor have I. It was a pretty remarkable moment, but then it's quite a remarkable time that we're in. And I think Justice Jackson is being properly responsive to the obvious concerns about the state of our democracy. And so, you know, bravo her.
And Senator, the Emil Bove nomination for a Circuit Court of Appeals strikes me as very possibly step one in Donald Trump's plan to put that 44, currently now 44-year-old man on the Supreme Court for many decades.
Well, you know, your theme this evening has been about lawlessness, and this guy really embodies lawlessness. He was neck deep in that quid pro quo scheme to hang a prosecution over the head of Mayor Eric Adams of New York, to coerce the mayor into going along with Trump's immigration and enforcement policies. He was neck deep in the DOJ scheme to cook up a fake criminal investigation, to give a fake basis for trying to seize funds that were going to climate change and green groups that they didn't like. And we've seen him now in this recent episode talk about the need, if judges don't let the Trump administration deport as Trump wants, to tell federal courts F you to a court order. That's pretty sharp lawlessness when you're telling a judge F you about their court order. So this guy is wreathed in lawlessness, and the only thing that keeps him alive is the sense of anxiety and fear, I think, that a lot of our Republican colleagues are fearing. A.G. Bondi and the deputy came to his hearing to sit in the back and glower at the Republicans and make sure that they were, you know, all in a row. It was like a scene out of a mobster movie.
Yeah, and you have Republican Tom Tillis on the Judiciary Committee, who's decided not to run for re-election, and anyone who was thinking that was going to free him up, he's already said he will probably vote for Emil Bove on the Senate floor, vote for his confirmation, which is about a week from now.
Well, not so fast. Let's wait and see. I think that the report from the prosecutor Huberman was pretty damning. And the only response that the department had was, he's a disgruntled employee and he's lying. And then all of these documents were released that are unbelievable corroboration of his initial statement. I mean, corroboration right down the line, including multiple references to Bove having said, F you, contemporaneous, you know, live action references. You really don't get better corroboration than that. And so I think it's going to be really awkward for the Republicans to ignore that entire body of evidence. I mean, it's one thing to ignore all the evidence around Kavanaugh when he's going straight onto the Supreme Court, but this guy's a little bit more of a problem.
Yeah, but as Donald Trump's former criminal defense lawyer, I suspect there's no one he could choose for the Supreme Court that he would trust more than Emil Bove.
No, I think there would be a real method on Trump's part to the madness of putting this character onto the Third Circuit first and then onto the Supreme Court. But the motives are evil ones. And the whole circumstance is so apparently bad, including that now with this additional information, this corroboration, it looks very much like Emil Bove lied under oath in his hearing, thinking that he could get away with it because the Republicans were going to give him cover by allowing him not to answer questions. And then this came up.
And Senator, again, this is one of those frames that I think we should come back to every once in a while. You and I both know that prior to Donald Trump taking over the Republican Party, this kind of information would instantly destroy a Republican nominee for a position on the judiciary appointed by a Republican president, even if the Republicans had full control of the United States Senate. They would almost all instantly turn against that nominee.
Correct. And we have statements from Republicans on the committee, including the chairman, that are basically saying exactly what we are saying, that we need answers to these questions. We deserve answers. You can't hide behind privileges that A, don't apply, and B, you haven't even asserted properly. And, you know, they're really walking themselves into a very tight corner. So next, what is it, Thursday's vote, I guess, is going to be really telling. And there's going to be a lot of pressure on them to put this deeply morally, legally, and ethically unqualified person onto a court.
Senator Whitehouse, we have to squeeze in a commercial break here. If you could please stay with us. I want to get your reaction to Donald Trump's Homeland Security Secretary and the FEMA response, the delayed FEMA response to that deadly flooding in Texas, the predictably deadly flooding in Texas. We'll be right back with Senator Sheldon Whitehouse. At a Trump cabinet meeting this week, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem said this about FEMA's response to the deadly flooding in Texas.
We as a federal government don't manage these disasters. The state does. We come in and support them, and that's exactly what we did here in this situation. FEMA went to an enhanced level immediately, and we're still there in presence, and FEMA's been deployed, and we're cutting through the paperwork of the old FEMA, streamlining it much like your vision of how FEMA should operate, and it's been a much better response to help these families get through this terrible situation.
CNN reports Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, whose department oversees FEMA, recently enacted a sweeping rule aimed at cutting spending. Every contract and grant over $100,000 now requires her personal sign-off before any funds can be released. As Central Texas towns were submerged in rising waters, FEMA officials realized they couldn't pre-position urban search and rescue crews from a network of teams stationed regionally across the country. FEMA officials realized they needed Noem's approval before sending those additional assets. Noem didn't authorize FEMA's deployment of urban search and rescue teams until Monday, more than 72 hours after the flooding began. Multiple sources told CNN. The top Democrat on the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee, Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, is back with us. Senator, more incompetence, this time deadly incompetence.
Yeah, bad incompetence. And in a really weird way, it belies everything that you just showed Secretary Noem saying. Cutting through the paperwork? No, they established new paperwork to blockade expenditures over $100,000. And then being responsive, everybody in the world was looking at the Guadalupe River. Everybody in the world was frightened for those children and hoping for the best and praying. How is it possible that when the search and rescue teams that are supposed to be headed there are blocked up behind this new Trump red tape, nobody thinks, well, let's pick that one out of the pile? So, I mean, the level of incompetence and malpractice is just stunning.
And, Senator, you don't have to be an environmental expert to know how predictable and likely flooding is in that area, an area known as Flash Flood Alley. Shouldn't there have been more preparedness at every level here?
Well, you know, obviously, as the casualties that we've tragically seen have shown, But what we've also seen is the Trump administration going in exactly the opposite direction, trying to undo the National Weather Service, trying to undo and even disappear FEMA, trying to interfere with NOAA and NASA, the other agencies that help gather data, trying to prevent Department of Defense weather data from getting shared. So the entire structure that we have built, a very, very impressive structure for putting together weather predictions so that people can be properly warned, essentially every single piece of that is being attacked or disabled or intended to be destroyed by the Trump administration. So them talking to each other as if they're normal people in a normal time doing their jobs is just bonkers. They are completely focused on destroying the apparatus that we need.
Senator, where does this thinking come from? Where does the thinking come from that, well, you know, weather reporting, weather forecasting really shouldn't be as accurate as it is?
I can't prove it, but when you look at how the fossil fuel industry directs every single thing that it cares to in the Trump administration, I think it's hard not to put the blame for this back on the fossil fuel industry. They know that when people talk about the weather and give weather warnings, they're going to talk about climate change now. It's too obvious and too widely known not to. So they go right at it, trying to attack our weather reporting and research services, because when they come to tell us and warn us, they're going to be talking about climate change. And those are words that are so heretical in Trump land that they won't even let federal agencies use them.
Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.